I'm Erin Lucy, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my January wrap-up, so everything I read in January. So January was like a fantastic reading month. I'm so excited to talk about everything, and I feel like it just got me like rejuvenated to read. I feel like by the end of last year through the fall, I was kind of like reading a lot more like mediocre books, and so yes, I'm really excited to have had such a good month. I mean, every single one of the books I read, I loved. I'm not even sure, I can't choose a favorite, not even sure how to rate them. Like, I really love them all. So it started off with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I actually started this in December and was hoping to finish it in 2022, but I didn't. That's okay. I finished it in January and I loved it. I do think it lived up to the hype. I just had heard so much about this book, so I feel like I had really high expectations. The premise of this book is that we follow mostly Sam and Sadie, who are two friends who meet in childhood, and they really bond over their love of video games, gaming, eventually game design, and they have just like such a strong connection and a really beautiful friendship. So that's really what this book is about. It's just like friendship, connection, and like love and conflict in friendship. Yes, and like growing up, dealing with life things, and also having these relationships with friends. So yes, it's very video game heavy. I'm actually, even after reading it, I'm actually really surprised that this has become so popular with people who even don't like video games, because I feel like it's so heavy on that. And I really liked it, but I generally like enjoy some video games. So that wasn't surprising to me, but I'm surprised it has become so popular, I guess. But it is really beautiful. The friendship, just like the way friendship is described and shown throughout this book, really beautiful. And I think the only things, I feel like it was like about 2/3, so I'm not going to say anything like that happens necessarily, but I had a lot of frustrations with Sadie, one of the characters, and just I felt like she was really harsh on Sam in a lot of instances that kind of made her seem kind of self-centered and was having a really hard time seeing things in like a different light, like even when she was told them, which was kind of funny. So again, I won't say that was just kind of like my biggest frustration, which I do think was like kind of part of it, like the conflict and everything, but it just made me really sad, and I feel like changed the trajectory of the relationship. So there's that. Very sweet. Again, just like a few frustrations, but I feel like I was very satisfied in the end, and I felt like it was fantastic. So there was that. And I have read till the end, so I know like the conclusion of everything, but I just still feel like, I don't know. Maybe it was just partly like the miscommunication. It felt like in a friendship way, there was some miscommunication that frustrates me in often reading contemporary romance. But yes, overall, really love this book. Definitely recommend it. I thought it was really beautiful. It is really sad, but beautiful. Yes, friendship. The next book I read was Icebreaker, and this is a contemporary like hockey skating romance. And this was probably the one that I liked the least of all my January reads. My friend was kind of super into hockey romances, and I think I saw this also maybe on BookTube or something. I used to figure skate, so I thought it would be fun to read. And I thought the premise was really interesting. Essentially, these two characters, one is a figure skater, and the other is the captain of the hockey team, of course. And they have two ice skating rinks. The hockey team practices on one, the figure skating on the other, and one of the rinks gets destroyed, or like somebody messes with it, and they don't entirely know who. So like their punishment is that they all have to share a rink, and they have to like work on a schedule, and they have to interact with each other a lot more. So it's like this kind of forced proximity type of thing, and a lot of it is really cute. I do feel like there was some things I just like didn't expect and found a little bit weird. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not sure how much to say. But I guess like my two biggest like problems with this book was, one, I feel like it just felt strange and unrealistic how like the main character essentially like clicked so much with like every single guy on the hockey team and like was all of a sudden like best friends with them. I don't know. I feel like when that happens a lot in like romance books, I just feel like it's like kind of unrealistic and funny and strange. It's like they're kind of like idealizing this girl and all of a sudden they just like all love her. And I liked the main character in this book. I thought she was pretty decent like romance main character, but I just like don't love when it's so emphasized like so much on, yes, like how much all the guys like get along with her and like love her so much, and like these like cutesy but almost over the top relationships she has with like every one of the dudes. Anyway, another thing I had an issue with is like the body size in this was like really emphasized, and I didn't really love how it was done. Like there was some talk of like body image and eating and stuff like that, but it just so much emphasis on like how tiny she was and how huge she was. I'm so over that. Like, can we stop with that? So many books do that, and especially in contemporary romance, and it drives me so crazy and creates terrible body image issues, which is already such a big problem. We don't need to contribute. And then the last thing, which I can say the least about, because to me, the ending, like romance usually ends in some sort of like positive way, you know, everything's wrapped up. But I thought this was just like too good for them. Like just like some of the things just like didn't make sense. It was like over the top, would probably never happen in real life. So Icebreaker. It is like a fun hockey romance, I guess, though, if you're into that. We have the Tea Dragon Society, which I believe I first saw on Allison Page's channel, but I was coming back from a conference in Austin, and we stopped at this bookshop in Salt Lake City called The Legendarium, which is really cute. I'll insert some clips if I can find them. And they had the series there, and they had like the little plushies too. It was just so cute. And so I ended up getting this because they just opened up pretty recently and they're really cute and I wanted to support them, and I've been really interested in this series. It is so freaking cute. I am really obsessed. Just like the art is really beautiful. The whole premise is like just, it's very wholesome, but it just is like about these tea dragons and like their caretakers and like the adventures they go on. It's just freaking adorable. And at the end, they have like all the different types of tea dragons. It's so precious. I'm obsessed. So the Tea Dragon Society, and I did end up getting the other two, so I'm hoping to read those relatively soon. So next, like where do I even begin with this? What do I even say? I essentially went down a massive Zodiac Academy hole this month. I mean, it has me in a chokehold. I could not stop reading for days. It was great and not great. And it was really funny because Carrie Can Read came out with a video at the end, and I was like, this is just so weird that I feel like I've all of a sudden seen this series everywhere. Like people are reading it again, even though it's like at this point kind of older. I didn't end up, like I started Carrie's video. I love her and I do love watching her videos, even on things that I don't like, but I ended up stopping this one because I really liked the series, and that video, it started to seem a little bit more negative than others, and I just didn't want to like, everyone can have their own opinions for sure. I just didn't want to like influence my own views, especially before talking about it, because I had a really good time reading it, and yeah. So where to even begin? I mean, I feel like a book series has not had me this hard since like I originally read Akatar a couple years ago. I just could not stop. Okay, so the first book is The Awakening, and this is like, I guess it's like two authors and they like write it together. So we have the awakening. And essentially what happens in this book, kind of to start everything off, we have these two twins, Tori and Darcy, and they are living in the mortal world, and they're kind of just struggling to survive. They've been bounced around in foster care homes at this point. I believe they're 18, so they're like recently out of their last foster home, which was also not a great situation. They had kind of a really rough upbringing, and at this point, Tori is like stealing motorcycles and doing sus things to get them money. And we open, and Darcy, the other twin, is like going back to their old foster home to steal their money back from the foster home, because they like left in a rush because it was like not a great situation. So that's how we open. They've obviously had a lot of struggles, and within the first few chapters, they meet this guy in a bar who eventually breaks the news to them that they are actually fae princesses who were taken to the mortal world as babies and like switched with these mortal twins because their lives were in danger in the fae world in Solaria. So he takes them back to this academy because they're 18. It's time to start their training, and their powers are going to be awakened. And so they go to Zodiac Academy. They have this awakening where they figure out like which elements they can control: fire, air, water, or earth. And they're obviously very powerful, can control many of the elements. So yeah, so that's like the beginning basic premise of the characters. They go to the school and they meet these heirs. So now in Solaria, essentially the king has fell back when they were babies. 18 years ago. And the king had this council, and the council kind of took over. So the council is made up of 4 people, and they're training, each council member is training their oldest child to take their place. So to then rule and oversee all the fae. And of course, the 4 heirs are these 4 boys who go to Zodiac Academy, and they're in their sophomore year. And they essentially make the twins' first few weeks at Zodiac Academy kind of a living hell. So this is where kind of people end up having some beef with this series, and I actually didn't think I would like this whole like bully trope thing. I don't usually like very dark romance, and I feel like the only other one I've really read and enjoyed was the Cruel Prince series. And actually, I even think in that the bullying was like worse and like less justified in the Cruel Prince. I actually, like, looking back at the Cruel Prince, was like more frustrated by Jude and Cardan, especially in the first book, than this series. But some people really didn't like that, and I totally get it. Like I said, I didn't expect myself to enjoy this type of a series, but what I think what did it for me was that once you start to learn about the world of the fae, you learn like why they're behaving this way, and it doesn't make it like necessarily justified, but I think that like this, like understanding the fae, how the fae world works, which is definitely frustrating, along with the character growth that occurs both like of the heirs and the twins throughout the course of all the books. I will say that I currently have read through book 6, and there's 8 out, and then a 9th that is like from the boys' perspective in their first year. So I think that like their character growth, how they learn and like learn to see things, like there's just so much growth, which I thought was really well done. I love when you see that, like when you just see these like people actually like learning from their mistakes, but also like it kind of made sense given how these people grew up. And this is gonna be like a mini bit like spoiler for later, because I feel like I wanted to share kind of like what that actually means for some people. So essentially their father, Tori and Darcy's father, was called the Savage King, and he was really known for his like violence and just like being a savage king. He was not merciful. He killed a lot of people for very little to no reason, and a lot of people think that he was like horrible for the fae. And so the heirs are taught from childhood they are basically raised to like believe that this king was so terrible for their people, that the council's doing a good job, and that if his heirs were ever found, if the twins are found, like they would be similarly terrible for the Fae world, which is not totally like a fair assumption for sure, but it definitely like makes it why they do what they do understandable. Essentially, like their goal is to like get them to leave. They don't want to kill them. They just want them to go back like to the mortal world, to kind of give up on being princesses, because they don't want things to turn out in a horrible way, I guess. They don't want like the same thing that happened with the Savage King to happen again for the Fae world. So that's just kind of like a little bit of a preface of like why this is happening. I think why it was like more believable to me, because yes, in other circumstances, like I don't love like the whole like bully thing, because there is like romance obviously between the twins and heirs. I don't want to say too much more, because that was like so half the fun of it, but you just like learn so much about all the characters throughout the books and their backstories. The 5th book, I will say, was by far my favorite. The first book was actually not so great. I felt similarly with the first as I did with like the first A Court of Thorns and Roses. I didn't love it, didn't think it was that great, and then kind of got like pulled in the next couple, and by the 5th I was totally hooked. Given that, I do want to say I've decided in these wrap-up videos to share some like things that I'm like other things that I'm currently reading or DNF'd, etc. And one of those things was Dark Fae, which is supposed to be a spin-off series that happens 5 years before Zodiac Academy. And I read about 300 of like 500 pages of this book, and I really did not like it. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like it did the same thing with like it had like these kind of same like bully romance, and it did not sit well with me. Like I feel like in this one, like the justifications were not there. I was very frustrated by everything, not to mention it was just so cringy. So yeah, I'm not gonna say too much more because I don't like love to hate on books, but I really didn't like it, and it did kind of take away from the Zodiac world for me, and I thought that was like a really big bummer. I feel like if it was just completely unrelated, it would have been different. But given how they wrote that book, it definitely took a little respect away from like the Zodiac Academy world away. I don't really know. I'm not gonna go too into it because I didn't finish reading it. I did read the summaries for the rest of that series because I wanted to know what happened and if like I should continue reading, but even the plot was pretty disinteresting to me, and like the stakes not nearly as high or like important as they were in Zodiac Academy. The only thing that was compelling about it is there's some character crossover and some characters that I do really like in the Zodiac Academy series. So that's just tangential, but I did want to like explain fully how I feel about the series, and that kind of took away from it a little bit. The other thing is like because they started as 18, they're young, they've grown up in this like kind of hard life. There are instances, not just the twins, but all the characters, when they're all like very acting their age, like very act teenagers. The thing that I kind of don't love about YA in terms of just like not being willing to see anything from any other point of view, again, from all the characters. So there was that, but again, I really liked it. I was so addicted. Again, I'm on the 6th, or I just finished the 6th book. In January, I read 5, so I just read the 6th at the beginning of February. I'll definitely finish the series, but at the end of the 6th was kind of a good stopping point for me, and I was just so addicted that I needed to stop and do other things. I have a lot of work to do. So yes, that is Zodiac Academy. I will say just a few other things, and some other things that like I really liked about it compared to other fantasy series. I felt like the stakes were really high, and like the things that happened felt like a little bit more realistic. I don't know, just in terms of like the really high emotions and the really terrible things, some deaths and things that happen felt more realistic in a way. Because I always feel like when fantasy worlds, especially fantasy romance worlds, are created, they often are tied in like these like really pretty bows at the end, you know, everything turns out great. But the reality is like there's no way like that's actually what would happen. Anyway, so I felt differently about Zodiac Academy because I think that it did that a little bit better in terms of just like having, you know, tragedy, high stakes. It is so emotional. I will say, like, from the end of book 4 through book 6, I feel like I have been just like emotionally wrecked. So that is a warning. I don't think a series has ever made me feel so like invested emotionally. Like I feel what they're feeling so hard. Okay, I've talked about this series for so long, but it was like 5 of the books I read this month. I'm debating doing a whole video about it. I like was just too into it when I was reading to like stop and film, but I might do a video talking more about Zodiac Academy. So that was that. And it's funny because I actually didn't really even have that book on my radar as something that I wanted to read. Like I'd heard about it, but just like didn't cross my mind, maybe because it was listed as like a bully romance, and that just has never appealed to me. And I actually really enjoyed it and thought that like the people's actions and things were like explained really well. And it does take a really long time to really understand. Like by the 5th book, I feel like, again, that was my favorite, and I feel like you start to get more points of views from the guys and other things. So it takes a really long time, but I do feel like the buildup was interesting to me and exciting. I feel like, did I have anything else on this series? Oh yeah, so we read it. The only reason I actually read the first one to begin with is because we were reading it for book club, and 3 of the 4 of us in our book club just got so addicted right away and started just like rolling through all the books. So it was just really fun. I feel like to be hooked like this, it's been like a really long time since I've felt like that with a series. Gonna change gears completely now. And the last book I read in January was Time as a Mother by Ocean Vuong. If you have seen my wrap up or my like top reads from 2022, my favorite book of the year was Ocean Vuong's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. His writing just like got me so hard. And so of course I was interested in reading Time as a Mother, and my sister gave it to me for Christmas. So I read it kind of throughout the course of January because it's poetry, and it's about his own life, Ocean Vuong's. So it starts off with a little phrase. How else do we return to ourselves but to fold the page so it points to the good part? In this deeply intimate second poetry collection, Ocean Vuong searches for life among the aftershocks of his mother's death, embodying the paradox of sitting within grief while determined to survive beyond it. Shifting through memory and in concert with the themes of his novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Vuong contends with personal loss, the meaning of family, and the value of joy in a perennial fractured American spirit. Vivid, propulsive, and brave, Vuong's poems circle fragmented lives to find restoration as well as the epicenter of the break. It is so beautiful. I just like, truly like the most beautiful writer I've ever read. I just like, let's see if I don't even know if I want to read any of his lines. I will say something about Ocean Vuong that I usually warn people about is that it is very hard-hitting and it will make you cry, and it can be dark. Like I feel like you need to be in like a semi-decent place to read his work because it like rips your heart out. It's just like gut-wrenching, but also so incredibly beautiful. So, Time as a Mother, yeah, it seems pretty apparent, I guess. Like, I just feel like I read so many different things, lots of different genres, and I think that's part of also why I feel like the month was so good, because I had, like, this contemporary that I really loved, like, literature, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and then the graphic novel, and I had a series, like a fun Zodiac Academy series that just kind of, like, hooked me and got me in, and then also some, like, really, like, heavier nonfiction poetry stuff. So that was just so fun. The whole month was so fun, and yeah, I thought it was just like such a good reading month. I forgot I had ended filming, and I realized I was going to talk about books that I've been like in the middle of or like working my way through, because I'm going to have some like longer term reads this year. So one, I've been reading for about a year now, and I'm almost done. So I'm hoping the vlog for this book will be out next month, probably beginning of March, because I'm going to be on a trip for a lot of February, so I'll be able to finish filming that. but I've been reading this for a year and I just read like a couple chapters like every few days kind of. And I've actually really loved reading it that way. I love that I've like been kind of like with these characters in this story throughout the entire year. Just like I keep thinking about it and coming back to it. But it does make like my reading kind of funny in terms of, I don't know, just like progress. And this is super long. I think it's over 1,000 pages, almost 1,200. So there's that, but I'm almost done. And the other one that I've been I actually started in January, is War and Peace. I decided probably like beginning of last year that 2023 was gonna be my year for War and Peace. So I'm almost through the first volume and there's 4 volumes. So I feel like I did a pretty good job reading this year, or this month. I haven't read a lot of classics recently, so trying to get a little bit back into that this year. And I'm doing a whole vlog on it, so I mentioned this in the vlog, but I am trying to read it with the Hardcore Literature Book Club because I feel like I get more out of classics when I'm like trying to like read or watch something, or like, you know, that like talks about the connections and meaning and stuff like that, because I feel like I have this fear of classics in part due to like I feel like I'm like gonna spend all this time reading it and not get out of it what I'm supposed to. I don't know. I feel like it's silly. Books are not really supposed to be like that, but I have this fear when it comes to classics. So yeah, so War and Peace. And now I'll finish with my conclusion. So yeah, I would love to hear what you have read or are reading right now. And I can't wait to share February. I feel like I'm just in such a roll right now. So yeah, I hope you're having a great day.